it's time for our next speaker, Anna. You will forgive me. Anna will give a speech related to internationalization of higher education.
It's difficult to say.
Yes, it's really difficult word. We have to find some other word for that.
Sorry, I'm the last before lunch, but be patient. So, when I was invited by Professor Lalic to give this talk, I was a bit concerned because I'm not expert in this topic. Let me see how is visualize. Sorry, Zoom. No, this full screen. Sorry. I would say I'm not an expert. I have just a personal experience. Back in 1998, I was Erasmus student in Belgium. And then I spent some months in Africa for my degree thesis. Then I spent some weeks in US during my PhD. I participated in international projects, conferences, so I have some ideas, but of course are personal ideas. But when I start studying a little bit about internationalization in order to give this talk, I realized that that's my opinion, that in all these definitions of internationalization, there is something personal. And what you said before, Branka, is an example. You can find some people saying that internationalization is a very good thing for research, for people, for students, but you also have some other people saying that it's like commercializing research, education, and there is a big debate about that. And I didn't know, but if you go on the web, you can find really a lot of documents about that. You can find regulations in the EU website, you can find research papers, you can find different case studies because each country is different, each institution is different. And you can find even research papers, and even Wikipedia gave some space to this topic. Here I just try to summarize some of the components that I found around about internationalization. And you can see that not all of them are positive, because when I say global competition for talents and when I say recruitment of international students, somehow I can say, yes, you push some very excellent countries to receive very excellent students. So it's not for all to go abroad and come back. So I think that we have to manage internationalization with careful, because we have to learn about international context, not just sell our students or our education to the international thing. But of course, there are many, many positive points, like student, staff, and scholar exchange programs that we have experienced in Serbia for Excel, the improvement of teaching curricula, and also research and education partnerships between institutions, and we are a living example about that. By the way, what did Serbia for Excel for this internationalization? We use a lot of different tools, but two of the main ones are guest lectures and expert training. And I was thinking about how to assess the effect of these tools in our students and researchers, because it's easy to be theoretical, but can I assess the real impact about these tools? So I was wondering how to do this, and I realized that I had to go to people that were involved in the process and just ask them to say what they think. So I decided to prepare two small surveys, simple surveys, and ask people to respond. These are just few words about the difference between guest lectures and expert training. I think that most of you are aware about that, but What I can say is that guest lectures were more devoted to students, while expert trainings were more devoted to researchers, professors, and PhD students. So there are two different things, but of course, everything is together, because when you do a guest lectures yourself, you are abroad to do this. So it's internationalization also for you, not only for students. And about expert training, we had listed in the project different topics, 6 topics, and for each topic, the project planned an outcome. But you can see that there are some, let's say, keywords like improved, better understanding, ability, understand, project. So there are very keywords that, they well describe what was expected by these 2 tools that we use in the project. So now I don't present all the questions, of course, but I will go through only to some of them about first guest lectures. So I prepared this survey and I sent to people involved in guest lectures. So just a few questions, general question. The first was about, do you think that the students have some problems with language, which is, is an important thing. And one thing is that in the questionnaires, I always give closed question in order to have the responses to be able to process the results and to present the results today. Half of people say no problem with English, but we know, for example, that in Serbia, a lot of people speak English very well. That's not the same in Italy. But guest lectures in Italy, they were devoted to international students. So it was easy also for us. But half of people admit that probably some of the students could have some problems in understanding, especially at the beginning of their studies, for example, the first undergraduate year. The second question was, what's your impression about the interest of students? They were interested in what you were saying. They were excited. They were, particularly interested. And also here people divided half-half. And someone say, okay, they were attending as any lecturer of their course, but half of people say they were very interested. They were taking notes. And in this particular case, I can say I was a guest lecturer, I can say my experience, and I can say that I think that the guest lecture works better if you collaborate with the local teacher. My guests here, Ivan and Marina, they prepare students and they ask students to do a relation about that. So they were very interested in the topic, interested in understanding what I was saying to them. Okay, this is to demonstrate that people were interested, students were interested, because a lot of them asked questions and clarification after the lecture. But going more into personal thinking about the result of guest lectures, the first question was, what do you think about the added value of the guest lecture for the attending students? And here on your left you can see the different possible options that people could choose. And we can see that many of the people say that the introduction of new information related to the course but not treated locally was an important outcome, and you see the scale is from completely disagree to strongly agree. So a lot of guest lecturers agreed on this option, and also on the possibility to learn about international experience, which is internationalization. But you can see that, for example, increased dynamism of the course was not, a topic in the guest lecture outcome. Then, what do you think about the added value of guest lectures to yourself? And you see also in this case we have a lot of agreements between people, about the added value, which is the confrontational stimulation with a very different context. You have different students, different country, different faculties, of course. The effort to introduce my field of expertise in a course treating different topics. I was teaching modeling in a physiological course. That was not easy. You have to understand how to introduce the topic in the course. I had the possibility to bring myself and my experience at an international level. And also the networking with new researchers and professors. Nobody thinks that no added value was present in the guest lectures, of course. So in the case you did more than one guest lecture, do you think that something has changed between the first experience and the second? So you learn about your first experience or not? And people agreed on say, yes, I was more confident the second time because I knew the context, because I was prepared to the experience, so it was more effective. And this is important because we learn based on our experience. So it's good to repeat such experiences in order to improve them and to make them more efficient, more effective. Then a critical question, which were the main difficulties faced in giving guest lectures? And you see that 40% of people say that find the best way to link my lecture content to local course content was one difficult. So you have to tune your presentation to the course you were teaching. And the preparation of teaching material. Of course, what you have seen there, teaching material, here we all prepare this one, send this one. So of course it's difficult, it's different to give a presentation and to prepare 10 pages of teaching material. So this can be a difficulty, but I think it's a very, very good result of the project also. And what do you think about the possibility to continue giving guest lectures after project lifetime? You see that more than 80% of people say, yes, no problems, I can continue. No limits to that. So they appreciated the experience. Only a small part says it depends. It depends on what? These were the options. For example, we have one respondent say need of personal direct contacts. I mean, these guest lectures were possible because of the project. So we need some framework in order to do internationalization. It's not only individual, initiative. So at the end, rate your experience between 0 to 10. And you see that 50% of people say 10. So it was great experience. But all the rates are high, of course. So the other part, the other 50% was divided among 7, 8, and 9. So I think that this demonstrates the success of guest lecture experience for the guest lecturers. And here I asked people to describe their experience with 2, 3, 4 keywords. And here the size of the word reflects the frequency of the word which was responded. And you see that experience was the biggest one. So it was a good experience, but also opportunity. And then you can see also other nice words like respectful, surprised, challenging. Of course, the community to which I asked these questions is small, so that's why I cannot have maybe many different words. But it's interesting because I don't think that they speak together. So experience is something that coming from inside. About expert training. Expert training, you see the division between the different topics, but you can see that the majority were participating to project development and management. But there is a reason, of course, because that's because in Florence we have dedicated courses, so a lot of people from here came, so the majority of people participated to this expert training, but you can see that also the other ones are very well represented. So at least 5 out of 6 topics were very appreciated and used by researchers. Then I asked if the expert training met and how met the expressed objective. The objective were overcome of identified gaps between, sorry, I used the wrong definition, but PFMS, both unifi, improvement of my S&T capacity, improve my teaching curricula. These were the objective stated in the project, in the proposal. And you see that the majority of people consider all the objectives fully met or very well met. This is important because especially expert training are based on personal improvement of curricula. So each researcher or professor that participates in expert training say from her point of view that it was useful to participate to these trainings. And asking if this experience would be relevant or not for their job, you see that 56% say relevant, but 44% say very relevant. So it means that the impact was very good. Then again, added value. What is the added value of expert training? Say between 1, disagree, and strongly agree, from 1 to 4, which was the added value of the expert training. You see the majority of people, the higher degree was reached by new knowledge and skill and the possibility to bring my experience and myself at international level. So they were rated at least between 3 and 4, so between agree and strongly agree. So you see that in this case, these two added value are somehow defined in the internationalization definition. So it means that we get the target. Then, okay, you did your expert training, but what is the main result? The product, let's say product. You see that through expert training, 30% of people say I gain joint papers and joint publication. This is one very good result, I think, of the project. Joint presentation to scientific conferences also. But somehow, some people also say that I do not think that expert training may turn out in a specific product. I mean, it's an experience. It's not obligation that I produce something. That's, I mean, also right. Then we have some additional thinking, which is improving teaching curriculum and new project. And I think that we will discuss in the following day about that. So do you think that some aspects could be organized differently, but some people say more topics maybe, or longer period, staying longer period in different institutions, and a lot of people ask for more practice. So this is important to be considered in organizing the next expert training. Again, what do you think about the possibility to participate to other expert training after the project lifetime? 80% say, yes, no problem, I will go and participate. But 12% were honest and say, it depends. It depends, and all these options were chosen. Financial restrictions, of course, it's not easy to spend 1 week or 2 weeks outside if you don't have a project that sustains this thing. It's difficult to have international agreements. They are not always present. In this case, we have a project, but you cannot choose randomly an institution and say, okay, I come for 2 weeks, and I mean, you give me a training for something. So it's very difficult. And it is also related to the availability of trainers, because of course I will spend 1 week or 2 weeks abroad, but I need someone that spend 1 week or 2 weeks with me. and time constraints are always present in research. So finally, rate your experience. You see that in this case also from 8 to 10. So the experience was much appreciated by our scientists, by our researchers and PhD students. Again, I asked to define their experience with some words, and you see that the most used word is useful, which is good because the expert training should be useful for yourself. Useful, but also experience again, interesting, but you can see many other nice words, educative, improvement, applicative, so appreciation was very, very high. So concluding, what we can say that Serbia for Excel implemented the idea of internationalization by means of even also expert trainings and guest lectures. 8 researchers, between researchers and professors, and more than 300 students were involved in guest lectures, and 9 researchers were involved in expert training. So it's a big number, I think. Main mentioned results are teaching curricula improved, teaching material produced, international networking enhanced, and new projects submitted. So I think that is a very successful way to intend the internationalization in Serbia for Excel. Of course, we have to consider that there is always a gap between the nice theory and the ground. So there are always financial constraints present, time constraints, work overload. So it's nice to talk about internationalization, but we need tools in order to implement this nice definition and this, very good idea to be, let's say, global in research and in higher education. Thank you.